Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the RockDaisy Sports Performance Podcast, where we decode the data, science, and stories powering elite athlete development. I'm Ron McKeefrey, and in every episode, I'll be diving deep with top strength conditioning coaches, sports scientists, and performance experts who are driving the game forward using tech, insight, and grit. Hey guys, welcome back to the Inside the Numbers podcast, where we highlight leaders in the strength and conditioning and sports science field. This episode is powered by RockDaisy, the athlete management system and workout builder that helps coaches, sports scientists organize data and make smarter decisions. Real excited this week. We have Javair Gillett. I've known Javair for a long time, going all the way back to the Detroit Tigers days. We're back, we're both kind of in the Florida area at that time, but it's been with Detroit Tigers. He's been Houston. He's now with the Minnesota Timberwolves. He just recently got his PhD not too long ago. It's just been killing it and building a high performance culture, and then one of the elite organizations in the country and the world. So, man, I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's good to catch up again.
So you've been at Major League Baseball and NBA, which, again, I mean, most people work in one of those sports most of their career. You've transitioned between the two. What were the biggest lessons that you learned kind of that carried over from the two sports and how you adapted to the things that were maybe different?
Well, I mean, I think in our position, we can cross over sports. We're here to create a better athlete. So what I learned is, I might be prescribing the same exercises for a basketball player as I did a baseball player. There are differences in the sport, so you're going to train differently. I think the biggest difference between those two sports is the tempo that we used. A lot more eccentric training when it comes to lower body performance exercises for the basketball player versus the baseball player, where we did a lot of acceleration-based exercises for the baseball player. So I think, but when it comes down to it, there's 1,000 different exercises and they can be utilized across multiple sports. So I did learn that, a squat's a squat, and we're going to use that either for a baseball player, basketball player, general population. They got a squat. That's what I learned.
That was, I always tell this story. I think I probably even told it on this podcast, but I always said that when I was in the NFL, that was my biggest job, was to figure out how many different ways can I trick this guy into squatting today.
Right. Absolutely.
That's what I came down to. But, so, I mean, I know, having been in professional sport, sometimes those guys, even though they are unbelievable athletes, sometimes they come from training backgrounds that, they were the best without doing anything. I mean, they just rolled out on the court, they rolled out on the floor, and they maybe didn't have a really solid, training foundation to sustain a professional career even. And so, as your perspective on like that, on long-term athlete development, it's particularly the elite athletes, has that changed at all as you've kind of navigated this profession?
So, and I've had the pleasure of working with, a group of athletes, whether it be with the Tigers, with the Houston Rockets, or even here with the Timberwolves, with, some really good rookies that we've had for a long time. So we've had that long-term athletic development model. You had Justin Verlander, we had, guys like Clint Capella coming in, Isaiah Hartenstein with the Rockets. And then, now obviously with the Timberwolves, you have Anthony Edwards and Naz Reid, Jaden McDaniels. So we've had time to work with these athletes. And I think the biggest key takeaway for me is just everything has been driven by data. So we can really have a purpose behind what we're doing and then talk to the athlete and give them the reasons, so that's how they buy in to the process. They truly understand when and why they're loading heavy and they're working hard in the weight room. They understand why they're wearing a sensor. So a data-driven approach has given us more purpose and a better way to educate our athletes.
One of the things that you and I, have always identified with, and why we're friends, is because we're both lifelong learners. I mean, I went and finished my PhD recently. You just got your PhD not too long ago as well. And we're a couple old meatheads that, work in a weight room, right? Why did you go back and get your PhD? What was the importance of that for you and for your career?
So, I think in this is you go through different place or, points in time of creating your own identity. I think one of the things for me, a goal was to get my PhD early on, and I just continued to get opportunities that just delayed the process. So it was a long time coming. So it was a personal goal of mine. I also think that in 10 years, just as when we were, going through in the middle points of our career, we started seeing more job descriptions. They're looking for people with masters, right? Back in the days, like, okay, we got to get our masters. I think now, if you're a young upcoming strength and conditioning coach, I think you're going to start seeing, and we're reviewing the resumes more and more. You're starting to see job descriptions ask for higher level learning. So I think you want to stay one step ahead of the game. So that was another reason, you know, in 10 years, this is going to be a requirement. I think, you're going to have even higher level than a master. I think we see that coming. And then the other thing is, it's for me, it's not sports science, it's health sciences. So there's what differentiates me from the data analytics side when it comes to basketball is we have our really smart sports science, basketball science people. I feel like my passion has been the health sciences. And so when we're crunching data and doing a lot of things, we're dealing with biomechanics and nutrition and mental performance. So it's overarching. So from a leadership perspective, we're even including medical in that. Managing and integrating with medical, you have to have a knowledge there. So I think the health sciences PhD program, you're really looking into health sciences versus just pigeonholing into like a specific sports science.
Yeah, you see that overseas. I think sometimes again, if you just stay in your lane, you're not going to see trends. And one of the trends that I noticed by traveling the world for a while was that in the other countries, there's not as many jobs. And because there's not as many jobs, a lot of the younger strength coaches or a lot of the younger coaches would stay in school longer, and get those PhDs. And so now they're coming out with this really strong foundation, academic foundation. Sometimes it was lacking on the soft skills or the coaching side of, the art of coaching side of things. But that's easier to kind of grow sometimes. And so, yeah, I agree with you. In a competitive marketplace, it's going to be a prerequisite at some point here. That's that's one of the reasons why I did the same thing. When you went to Minnesota, you take on a new culture, you take on a new players, you're in a leadership role. Like how did you go about, defining kind of your role, and where did you see opportunities to elevate kind of the performance program?
So, we all both of us at least started as strength and conditioning coaches. So what was our major role? I think we might say it was programming the exercise fitness programs for our athletes. And then over time, we realized there's a lot more that goes into it. Back then we were dietitians, a mental performance coach, the strength coach. We were doing everything. And with the Tigers, I remember thinking to myself that, when we lost a World Series in 2012, and it was two instances where we made it to the World Series and we ended up losing. And I said, dang, this had nothing to do with physical conditioning. Like the physical aspects is not the reason why we were not able to close it out in both of those occasions. Two totally different years, different, somewhat of different teams and personnel and all that. And in both cases, it didn't have to do with just the physical aspects. And so there's a lot more to it. And so I think, from there, I've come to appreciate there's more, more to it, nutrition, mental performance. So what I wanted to do is oversee all aspects of performance. So if I'm going to get held accountable for performance, I want to have the ability to oversee all aspects. So my role is not only strength and conditioning, but you have the sports science, you have nutrition, you have mental performance. And, obviously there's a lot that goes in between all of that, but there's multiple departments that the director or the high performance director or director of performance might oversee. And it's not just the weight room.
You mentioned, I agree 100%. I think, you looked at to the high performance director positions in some of these Olympic sport countries. And a lot of those directors of high performance were former strength coaches because they have the unique ability to speak the science and be in the medical world and be in some of these other, kind of really specialized areas, but they also have the ability to speak, coach speak, and athlete speak, and kind of translate that to all those departments. When you're working with medicine and nutrition and sports science and mental health and player development and all these different areas that go into performance, what have been some of the tactical ways that you've created that collaboration and that open dialogue and been able to kind of keep your thumb on the pulse? Because that's the nice thing about being a strength coach, right? You're seeing them every day and you got your thumb right on them, and you're the heartbeat. You understand, exactly what's going on in the organization. But as a director, now all of a sudden it's going through other people to you sometimes.
So I'll use like a return to play example because that's integrated with medical, like closely integrated with medical. And I think in our role, we want to, and this is across all sports, there's a fight between medical and performance. Who's going to oversee who? And it shouldn't work that way. It's how are we going to collaborate together? And you're going to have leaders on the medical side. You're going to have leaders on the performance side. My role, I just want to put this injured athlete in the best place to succeed when they return. And my expertise is going to help the medical department make better decisions. It's going to help player development in the skill side. So if you're in a football field, your skill coaches that are helping design the return to play drills that they're going to do that is football specific, is basketball specific, And then you have the strength and conditioning coaches. You tie in nutrition, you tie in the mental performance for their return to play so they're confident in their abilities when they return. So you have to tie all these things together. And so we can create this data-driven approach, this process to get them back. I walk into the training room and I say to medical, what information can I gather for you that will help you make better decisions while you're putting them out there? So if it's getting them to return to top speed, and then that's our process is medical is going to get them, physical therapists are going to get them to return to top speed. Once they return to top speed, we're going to transfer the program to the performance department. And so how can I help drive that whole process by using our workload monitoring systems, for instance, or biomechanical analysis? How can we have our team protocol, but then we have a specific injury. What does medical need to see with this particular athlete that we can use our force plates and our motion capture systems? And so how can I help you? I think if you go into each room looking to serve and help, I think that's how you integrate and collaborate.
You mentioned force plates and motion capture and, some other things there. What diagnostics are you using on a regular basis to kind of, what information are you gathering to kind of say, oh, wait a minute, I'm flagging this guy and I'm putting him with this department or that department to kind of start that process?
So first of all, keep it simple. There's a lot of variables. I'll use our workload monitoring system. We use Connect. So there's tons of variables. I would say what's cool about some of these systems is you want to get physiological load, which is more of like an internal assessment, right? An internal load. Then you have mechanical load. So that's the accelerometry. So you're getting mechanical stressors, joint stress. So if we could keep it simple in the information we're providing and putting out there, that's step one, because it's benefiting the team, it's benefiting the organization. And then you can do all your advanced analyses with yourself that can help communication with the athlete. I found that you're moving differently or poorly in this aspect. And so now you become the expert when you're communicating to the athlete or maybe your team closer to you. But if you're going to go out there and communicate with the head coach and you're putting out all this data, like they're not going to look at it. So keep it simple. And so, physiological load, if you're monitoring heart rate and you can get their body weight and get these other aspects that have to do with physiological distance in speed, and you can factor that in, that's a great measurement, to individualize a person's program. Mechanical stressors, separate the overall workload from the high intensity workload. So if you can really standardize what was going on that was high intensity. So for our case in basketball is live play. So we separate that out. That's standard. And it's more standardized across the board, even in a team practice, because we can phase it out and say this was live events, like where it's 5-on-5 play. We're going to get a good indication, or for us, a better indication of, what are the high intensity workloads and get rid of all the noise, So I think you got to find methods that make your data collection easy to interpret and easy to make better decisions with the athlete, and make sure that it's accurate. You're not just looking at a lot of noise in your data.
With those athletes, when, it's easy to kind of go down this rabbit hole as coaches where we want to show how smart we are and have all these different gadgets and all these different things. And all of a sudden your athlete walks out on the court or on the field and they look like a lab rat, with all these things.
Yeah.
How have you created the buy-in from the athletes to want to, to embrace the monitoring? And then likewise, when you do have those moments where there's a high, acute to chronic score, there's, or there's, a lot of mechanical stress or something like that, and you're trying to communicate that to your coaches, what kind of reporting are you doing? What kind of conversations are you having to create that buy-in from the athletes all the way through to the coaches?
I think the personalization, educating them on how we're using this to personalize, they don't see all the work that's going on behind the scenes. But what I will tell them is that there's a lot of work, a lot of time that we've spent over the years to collect information that we now are using to personalize and improve our analyses internally. So that's a more complex way of explaining it. To the player, I'm going to say, listen, we have a lot of data over the years to show exactly what we should be looking at. And now what we've determined. So for instance, we'll go back to workload. If you look at physio workload, and this is stuff that's not necessarily always published. If we're working with Connexin or even Catapult, they're going to have physio workloads. They'll have mechanical workload. There are nuances. There's differences that we might look at to cater to each individual. But when I'm talking to the athlete, it doesn't matter which one I report. So you and I are going to argue, oh, well, I report mechanical load and I report physio load. They're highly correlated. So it doesn't matter which one we use. Just make sure that we're communicating, consistently across the board to the athlete. So if it's something that the athlete will understand, then just go with that. But then you can sit back and be more advanced, knowing the nuances between the physio load and mechanical load. But when it comes to reporting, don't just send, one, to the coaches, you're sending one thing, to the players, you're sending, just keep it simple. So I think that's a major key. And then what the coaches want to see is simple. What the players want to see, I think what we've established is a way to report the workload process, the workload for each day. I think we found an easy, simple way to report that the players can comprehend, that the coaches can comprehend and use. But the bottom line is that in those cases, it's individualized, it's personalized, it's based on that player and that player alone, and we're not trying to make comparisons across the entire team. So it really helps in putting together a program and making adjustments to the program for each of our athletes.
The one nice thing about pro sports compared to maybe college or high school or things like that is that they do understand almost as soon as they get there that they're on a ticking clock, and that their career has got a shelf life as to how long that could be. And the better they take care of their body, and the better they do things, buy into coaching and all that, the longer they can extend that career. And that's always that personalized approach that you're talking about. That's what resonates with them the most, I think, is how can I put more food on your table? How can I help your family get one more paycheck or one more year or one more contract down the line? And those things resonate for sure.
I mean, we're on this workload monitoring topic. We might as just end with this. We're not using it to pull players off the court. We're using it to maximize their conditioning.
That's right.
And if you're going to go into a team and say, oh, we need to rest guys and all that, it's not going to go over well. And actually, you're probably doing a disservice to the athlete.
Great.
So for fear of injury, they are getting themselves hurt. So we got to push past their thresholds. And so we're reporting, if a guy's well above their personal threshold for the day or for the week or for however you want to do it, we're finding ways to speed recovery, but we're not necessarily pulling them out completely. There's so many different variables. So we're looking at, it's not just one variable. Oh, his force plate metric that I look at, it's down, so he needs rest. Like, no, like don't do that. No, we're looking at advanced methods that we can get a more internal look into the body. That would be a great step in the right direction. There's the resistance right now is it feasible in our environment, especially if you're getting the feedback back, returned to you in 5 to 7 days. That does us no good either. So, whatever your formulas and algorithms are, you want to try to test them and make sure they're accurate, take into account multiple variables. I've done every type of survey. Every year I'm trying to do a new survey, and just, some of these Likert scales are just nonsense, right? And so what is really going to work? And let's be real, and not waste the athlete's time.
Right.
Let's get to it. And it'd be nice to have this perfect world, but in our environment, it's not feasible, or they just, they're not telling the truth, or it's survey fatigue where they're just not taking it seriously enough. There's a lot of factors that go into it throughout the season. So you don't want to, what we call in baseball, the eye wash. It's that busy work that is just trying to justify our jobs. Let's not go about it that way. Let's try to make a positive impact on the athlete.
I'm going to use that. I like that. Well, these athletes, obviously, they don't understand HRV and shrimp and a low, a CMJ that's low or something like. They don't understand those things, but they do understand, that they're feeling fatigued, or they maybe they're not coming in as optimal as they would like. How are you in those tactical settings? How are you, especially a sport that has a long season, that you're doing lots of traveling? There's a lifestyle associated with it. All these factors that go into being a pro basketball player. How do you help control the other, 20 hours that you don't have them, so that they come in an optimal setting?
Well, for us, there's
question. This is
yeah, I mean, there's education. I was going to say, I'm going to show up at this guy's doorstep and, actually take his video game or his, something out of his hand so he can get some sleep. We have some really health conscious players nowadays. So it's not like they're doing crazy things. They just don't want to sleep. They want to do the things they enjoy. They spend so much time practicing their craft. And so then when they do get off time, it's like they want to just live a normal life and do normal things where, they're on the court they'll practice in the morning, and then at 7, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., they're back at the court. They're doing 2 days, 3 days, so while normal people are playing video games at 7 and going to sleep at 10, they're just starting their video game at about 11:30 midnight just to feel normal and get a little rest, mental recovery, just to get away from the stressors that have to go with their job. So there's a little bit of understanding of what they go through. I think that's first, and then having patience with that, and then hopefully the educational process will allow them to create change. I mean, what a wonderful story Anthony Edwards has been, but nutritionally, just it takes time. So that long-term model that you were talking about it's over time. He's even changed his palate, but he's also learned that he's learned that it gets results. He's happy with the results and so it's a motivating factor to stay more consistent with nutrition, be more health conscious when it comes to intake, food intake. So his meal planning, he's still young and can eat, things that you and I, we don't have the metabolism to eat even when we were his age. So he's gifted, but at the same time, he's making better choices only with time and learning. So you have to have patience. Sometimes, especially with the new system in the college, you don't have much time. So it's like now. And so sometimes as a coach, you have to take a step back and say, okay, it might not happen now, but maybe you'll have an impact on this player later on in life, even though you won't really witness it.
Yeah, I think that's the hard. I think what you said there is the key to that is trying to have an empathy and putting yourself in their shoes, and then helping them kind of remap out their schedule and find those gaps to where maybe they can check out, earlier in the day and get an extra couple hours of sleep, or create some habits and piece those together in different ways to form good habits. But it's a behavioral science position. It's trying to get them to understand what they do off the field matters as much as off the court. It matters as much as on the court.
I mean, we're working, we're working, even though we're at homes, we have, some of our players, they have families, we have families, but we're still touching them from afar, sending a text, so if you're talking about trying to get them to follow through with a meal plan, like we're all doing, I think that's the approach. That's the right approach. Shoot them a text. Hey man, like make sure you get this meal in now. We're trying to put on some weight. Being really, really convicted and persistent. And if a player's not calling me a little crazy or this, then, or complaining about the work he's doing or that I'm annoying him, then I don't know if I'm coaching him hard enough. You know what I mean? So I think we want to be in that player's ear, and in the end, they're going to appreciate that. But ultimately, they have to make the decisions themselves. I'm not going to fine our athletes. I'll fine them if they take advantage of one of our staff members. If you say you're going to be here and you're not, and my staff member was there, we'll fine you. But when it comes to missing a lift, I'm not going to fine you. I've just found, and that's in our world, it's not inspiring the athlete to be in the weight room. It's only going to push them away. So my challenge is to myself is how can I find a way to get this person to want to be in this room right now? So even in my role, like I feel like to get them to follow through, I have to be involved in the weight room. So we have sports scientists that want to be hands off or just have done more. It's more of a data scientist, which is great. We have a great data scientist who helps me in our department, in the medical department. He's one of the best. He's a little bit more hands off. Because of that, it allows me to be in the weight room more because I want to be hands on with the guys. So I think touching on and being integrated with their routine and their daily life and the grind, being in the grind with them is helpful so that then you can communicate, hey, this is what I want. You got to get sleep tonight. This is the night because look at our schedule coming up. Here's a great time where you can lock in on the video games and do whatever, but tonight, get your sleep. So what their schedule is coming up and you can guide them in the right, hey, get your nap in at this time, like between 1 and 3, get that nap in because that you coming off of, 5 hours last night, make sure you put in the schedule today that you get your nap,
Yeah.
And if you help them plan that day, if you start talking about things you want them to do a week in advance, that's not going to go anywhere. Just talk to them about what you need them to do like now.
That's right.
I think is a key. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I think one of the things you said there that I think is super important as well is that you're present, like whether or not it's, you're driving home and you pass a cookout and you text the guy at a stoplight. I better not have seen your butt in that freaking cookout down in
right.
5 burgers or something, like those little things where you're constantly kind of in their ear, even though, sometimes it may come across as nagging or it is, they appreciate that. That's, that keeps them connected to you, and they're going to say that you're a little bit crazy or that you're a little bit whatever, but they respect it. And I think
100%. I have a great staff so